Hey everybody, this is Mike. Today is January 20th, 2021, and, let's talk. This should be a fun one. I'm looking forward to this. In fact, I look forward to all of these things. Internally, there's this like build up of energy when I get like an inspiration of what I want to go and talk about. And there's usually like a whole bunch of different ideas which I'm trying to weave together to make some sort of coherence, and there's an internal pressure, like, can I do it? And so that kind of like it keeps me sharp, or at least I hope it keeps me sharp. But nonetheless, today we're gonna talk about books a little bit. I'm gonna start with the Glass Bead Game and pick up where the silver coin left off, and then I want to connect this to the Susquehanna mystery and the Invisible College and some information which in this past week was just given to me. So I see them as connected. I see it all as connected, and hopefully I am able to weave it together for you as well. So let's begin. So there's a little recap, I don't know, like right around Christmas time, the end of December, I received that poem in the mail, and there was the silver coin, and two things. One, that in itself was an unusual type of experience, but then it tied into what I was doing in my private life at that moment. And specifically what I'm talking about is like I was reading this book, and the night before receiving this coin in the mail, the passage in this book was all about receiving a silver coin. So that was an indicator that, okay, let's go look at this a little bit more deeply. And in addition to that, there was reference, applied reference to another book, which was called The Glass Bead Game. The Glass Bead Game is not a book which I was familiar with, but I did just like some brief research, and looking at what that book was, I was like, all right, this is something which I need to read. This is something which is going to take precedence over the other book, which Jenny and I were reading together. And so we decided to put that book on hold, and we started reading The Glass Bead Game. And so this is just friggin' wild. So the first thing I want to explain is so this book, it's written by Hermann Hesse. I think that's how I pronounce it. I think I've read one book by Hermann Hesse before, Siddhartha, but I'm not particularly knowledgeable on him as an author. But in recent research, I can see that he was a man of significance in the literary world. So the style of this book, the way it's written, it's kind of like you can see right here. This is the full name of the book. It's called The Glass Bead Game, a tentative sketch of the life of Magister Ludi Joseph Knecht, together with Knecht's posthumous. Am I pronouncing that right? I know it means like dead, or like after he's hasn't been released until after he died. Writing edited by Hermann Hesse. And so the nature of this book, and it's kind of done tongue-in-cheek, is that Hermann Hesse is an editor telling the tale of this character, Joseph Knecht, and that's how the book is written. And so the first thing right off the bat is, and I think I've indicated this in another video, is I'm currently in the middle of a book series which I'm reading to my sons. And it's called The King Killer Chronicler. Chronicles, and we just finished the first book. It was called The Name of the Wind, and this book is so friggin' good. Like, there's so many times I'm reading, we put it down, I'm like, I just love this book. I love this character. I love everything about it. I normally do not have a lot of experience reading fantasy books, and so this is new to me. It's fun, all this sort of stuff. But the point I want to make about this, and that book also, at the exact same time of receiving this coin, also had an indication of a silver coin, like literally the day of receiving this in the mail. That night I read a couple pages to my boys, and it was about receiving a silver coin. But what I want to talk about in this other book, and I just finished that. We haven't started the sequel. Here's the sequel. We just got this in the mail. I mean, these things are thick books. This is dense. This is thick. There's a difference between the two. But anyway, so the nature of how the Name of the Wind, the King Killer Chronicles is written, is the main character, and his name is Kavote. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. He's this larger-than-life character, and the story in the first book, it picks up with him around age 30, and much of his life has occurred, and he's got this reputation, which is very in the book, which is very mythic, and he's known throughout the lands. And a chronicler stumbles across his tavern. He's, at the time of the first book, he is a tavern owner, and the chronicler kind of figures out oh wow, you're Kavothi, you're this mythical guy, and I'm a chronicler. Can I tell your story? And then Kavothi's like, yes, you can tell my story. And so the setup of the Name of the Wind is this mythic character telling his stories to a chronicler. And the reason why that's so interesting is because this book is positioned exactly in the opposite. This is written by the chronicler of a mythic character. And I'm reading this Kavothi story, and this happens with all literature or movies. It is designed for you as the reader to tie yourself into a character, all characters, it doesn't matter. And it's very much this is the magic of storytelling, or part of the magic of storytelling. And so seeing this from two different sides, right away, I'm seeing this and I'm like, wow, this is, I haven't read other books that are structured like this, and so seeing the timing of this, so that's a hit to me. I'm like, all right, this is Link. And then secondly, I'm this far into the Glass Bead Game, and it is very evident that music is very important to in this book, and it's written about from the perspective of someone who is very, very knowledgeable about music, not just the history of music, but more so music theory and being a musician. And the main character in the other book, Kavothi, music and being a gifted musician is a big part of that story as well. And the way it talks about music, it pulls me in. I'm a lot of things, but one thing which I'm not, or one thing where I have no experience with, is playing music, which I always think is odd. I grew up in the suburbs in the 70s and 80s, where you grew up part of the American way is you introduce children to music, and my sister, she grew up playing the piano, but for whatever reason music was never brought to me. And so all human beings, I love music, but I recognize that there is a very, very big gap in my understanding. I have an inner sense there is a lot more to music than in music theory, which can be applied to the greater understanding of the human experience in life. I just know that. I've always known that. So whenever I'm around people who really get music, talented musicians, I'm always asking them questions, because I want to understand it for the purpose of really taking that knowledge of music theory and applying it on a greater scale. And that's what these books are about. So right away, like, you know, I'm aware of this. I'm getting really, I'm getting excited about that. And it's pulling me in, and it's confirmation that these books, these stories are where I should be right now, you know, in the unfolding of my story. So then the second thing which is interesting within the Glass Bead Game is it's dedicated, can you read this? It's dedicated to the Journeyers of the East. And I believe that is the title of another book by Hesse. And not knowing what that book is about, and not really certain of the role of the Journeyers of the East in the context of this book and in the other stories by Hesse, it's very, very Rosicrucian. The whole idea of Rosicrucians and Rosicrucianism is, you know, the Journeyers of the East kind of hints at that, or at least it uses a very similar type of imagery and word structure. And we're going to get a little bit more into the Rosicrucians later on in this video, but and by no stretch of the imagination do I think I really understand what the Rosicrucians are. I don't think anyone does. Like, you know, if the thing is, when you go and you study the Rosicrucians, you begin to realize, like, it is like Rosicrucianism is the ultimate ARG, or is just another example of another ARG. But it is designed to be very misleading. It is designed to be confusing. It is allowed for charlatans to claim themselves to be Rosicrucians to help hide whatever their true purpose is. You know, one of the gags of Rosicrucianism is, you know, is it real or not? And, you know, some of the biggest names in history have been tied to being part of the Rosicrucian order. And so the Rosicrucian order, when you go and you research it, you begin to realize, like, Rosicrucianism is just one more name for this society of unknown philosophers. That's another name of the Rosicrucians, and that with like a lowercase r. Like, Rosicrucians refers to something else, and like there's a title for a certain time which means Rosicrucianisms, but there's something else. There's something else which extends throughout all of our history, and, you know, finds itself popping up, you know, throughout all of these different parts of the world, and they have these different names, and they're part of something, and it's alluded to. And what it's alluding to is another, maybe another way of life, or a deeper understanding of what the human experience is. And the idea, or another name, of the Journeyers to the East, that's just so friggin' Rosicrucian. So you've got that, and then, you know, you go and you look at this guy's name, Hermann Hesse, and, you know, there's an anagram in there of a scene, Essene. And, you know, I'm not an expert of the Essenes, but I know that the Essenes are the supposed authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And again, like, what are the Dead Sea Scrolls? I don't know, but I know it's one of these, you know, ARGs. And I'm using this in a lowercase ARG. Like, you know, it's these alternate realities which we can begin to get ourselves involved with. All reality is an alternate reality. It's whatever, you know, your internal is, you know, that's the nature. That's the nature of being human, is these, like, realities which we have, our internal stories, like both our stories and then the reality which the story blends into. It's a game, like, you know, game theory. The elites call it the great game. Like, this idea of stories and games are very, very significant to the human experience. And the more we go and expand upon what that means, the more we can begin to let's say, play with it, experience life in a completely different level, quite literally leveling up. To me, that's what Rosicrucians are all about. They're the puppet masters, and they're the ones who are also the teachers, who are bringing us to and pointing all along at, like, this is a game, and these are the parts of the game, and this is how you move throughout it. These are the time travelers. This is all the same, whether you're conscious of it or not. So, let me talk about the Rosicrucians for one more second, and then I'm going to get into the weird stuff. All right, so I got into Rosicrucians, or I started researching about Rosicrucians. Like, I was familiar with them. I heard that terminology before in a lot of the research I had done in the past, but it wasn't until the Susquehanna mystery, which was about 5 years ago, that I really became curious about Rosicrucianism. And that was because the beginning of the Susquehanna mystery, if you will, the rabbit hole, or the trailhead for me, was the John Smith map of Virginia. And that is, when you go and you study that, all signs point to Francis Bacon. And Francis Bacon was, he's another one of these characters, these larger-than-life mythical characters, whether that be Joseph Knecht or whether that be Cavote. But it's like there is a recurring theme of these certain individuals that we're seeing both in literature, but we're also seeing in history. Whenever you see these people who have so much, they've done so much that it defies like logic. Like, this person couldn't have done all of these. Like, to me, that's one of the signs of, like, these are, whether you want to call it either a Rosicrucian teaching or a Rosicrucian Grand Master, it doesn't really matter. But then also there's an element of truth to it, because these guys are, they are in a league of extraordinary gentlemen, or gentle ladies too. I don't think that it's limited to having a penis. It's limited to having 5 fingers. I looked at that. I saw you just saw 4 fingers. So this is the story. So this is it. So I start getting into Francis Bacon. I'm curious about all of that because of the John Smith map, and that eventually brought me to this. Probably a lot of you are familiar with this. This is The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. This book first came out in like the 20s, and it's considered like, the quote unquote Bible. Again, we're going back to Francis Bacon when we're talking about the Bible, but nonetheless, it's the Bible of esoteric research. And I'll read the subtext, or the subtitle. The Secret Teachings of All Ages, an encyclopedic outline of Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolic philosophy. And this here is the reader's edition. I think I told in another presentation about how I came about the Field Center, or the Field Project, when I was living in Wilmington, Delaware, and this book came to me through that same house. Sarah, whose house it was, she moved to New Orleans, and she was liquidating like the majority of her belongings, and this was her book, and so she gave it to me. And, shortly after that is when I began the Susquehanna mystery. In fact, probably 5 or 6 months after that. And, I looked at this book. I knew this book was always important. This is one of the important books. I never read it. Like, who's going to read this book? There's no story to it. It's an encyclopedia. But as soon as I started the Susquehanna mystery and research, and I'm going down Francis Bacon, there's so much information about Francis Bacon, but the best information I found was in this book. There are like maybe 40 or 50 entries on him and Rosicrucianism, and that was so amazingly helpful as I began to understand what all of the Susquehanna mystery was, what I was looking at. But as I'm reading this book, this is the reader's edition. This is the the Barnes and Noble edition. This was written for, like, you know, for folks like us to get our hands on. When this book first came out, like, it was not this edition, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. When it was first released in the 20s, it was, you had to pre-order it, and I think it was like $200 in 1922 dollars, which might be like $1,000 in current times. Don't quote me on that. I just kind of winged it. But it's a lot more, you know, because of inflation. The point I'm trying to make is, like, it wasn't like, you know, this was a serious book for serious students of the occult. And there have been many, 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 many different editions of this book. And if you know anything about, like, you know, how books work, and when the elite, you know, publish books, like second editions, third editions, and so forth, they can be changed. You know, there can be, words can be taken out, like just one sentence, like one key sentence can be taken out, or something along those lines. And so this being the reader's edition, this being, like, at least in theory, the most watered down version there could be, I'm always wondering, like, I wonder if there's more. I wonder if there's more to this book, you know. And I wasn't that interested. I wasn't going to actually go out and, like, you know, find myself an older copy, a different edition to go and compare and contrast. But undoubtedly, that was in my mind. You know, I was thinking about that. I was aware of that. But, you know, my perspective in terms of how I meet life is, like, everything's in my own backyard. Like, it's not meant to be difficult. It's meant to, you know, you're meant to discover what is in your own backyard. You're meant to find it. And, like, the difficulty is having the eyes to see. It's not necessarily having to go get it. Like, that to me is, that's the inversion. You know, you need to get this expensive equipment. You need to go here. You need to go there. And so that means, like, you have to be part of their system to go through it. And, you know, to me, that's an indication that, you know, that's the inversion. The truth should be, it should be easy. It should be all around you. It should show itself to you. It should give it to you. So, that being said, I'm going, you know, this was, I began the Susquehanna mystery and research. It was, I think it was 2015 or 2016, but it was in April. That I do know. It was in April. And December's my birthday. And that birthday, I can remember it. And I was living in an apartment in Marietta, and I was by myself on my birthday night. Like, I don't mean that, like, you know, no need to feel, like, sympathy. Like, there was, like, I went out with some people maybe the night before, and, you know, maybe I had lunch with people. Like, you know, I wasn't, like, by myself on my birthday night. But the actual night, like, I didn't have any plans, and I was by myself. And I think this was my first birthday after, like, separating from my family, from like, living in the same house as my sons and the mother of their children. And so, like, there was undoubtedly, you know, it was a time of bittersweet introspection. So that day, I get a call from my friend Seppi. And Seppi goes to me. He's like, listen, I've got another friend, someone who I don't know. He's like, I got another friend who's going to be in Marietta. And this guy, he's really into history, and he's got his 2 children with him, and he's going to be passing through Marietta. And I'm wondering, can I give him your number, and can you give him a tour of Marietta? Marietta is a really interesting town, and on a baseline level, it's got a really interesting history. And he's like, can you give this guy, like, a tour, and you know, it'll be a favor to me. I'm like, I like people. I'm like, yeah, definitely. It's my birthday. I ain't got nothing else going on. So I'm like, yes, I'll go do it. And so it was this guy, Chris, and his 2 children. I want to say they're probably like 14, 15 years old, and they were homeschooling them. And they were like, I really admired the way that this guy approached the education of his children. And, you know, I liked him. I liked his kids. I give him the tour of Marietta, and, like, you know, I kind of got the feel that, you know, you know, they're not that weird, you know, and I say that in the best way. Like, I'm always having this internal, like, feeling of, like, how weird, how far can I push something with someone? I don't ever want to make anyone uncomfortable. I don't want to push anyone beyond their boundaries. But I know I have an unusual understanding of reality. And, you know, whenever someone who has an unusual understanding of reality pushes that against someone who has a different understanding of reality, something more mainstream, like, it can make them uncomfortable. Like, I've learned that through experience. And so my sense was that this was not this guy was kind of like, you know, he's obviously, like, not part of the mainstream. He's educating his children his own way, and, like, you know, he's kind of, you know, following his own path, but, you know, he's still, like, from my take was, like, he's still, you know, with a certain understanding. So I kept a lot of the weird stuff, you know, what I thought was the weird stuff. I kept it to myself. So at the end of the tours, you know, I got in their car, and it was funny because I remember it was dark out. We were supposed to meet like at 3 o'clock when it was going to be light, and I wanted to go show them things which they could see with their eyes. But it was dark, and we did a tour in their car, and you couldn't really see anything, but it was a nice conversation, probably like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so. Maybe it was around 5 or 6 o'clock, whatever would be dark in December. And at the end of it, Chris says to me, he's like, "Hey, man, you know, I'm grateful for this. You know, you went, you did this, you don't know me, you shared your insights. I'd like to make it up for you. Can we take you out to dinner?" And I'm like, hell yeah. I love to be taken out to dinner. And it's my birthday. Now, I didn't tell him it was my birthday, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking in my own mind, I'm like, of course this is going to happen. Of course I'm going to be taken out on my birthday because, you know, this is how I see reality. Like, you know, it's going to unfold, and he doesn't need to know it's my birthday. So we go out to dinner. We go out to a place called McCleary's in Marietta, and we go and we have like a really nice time. And then towards the end of the night, he's like, "You know what? I got something for you." Remember, he doesn't know it's my birthday. He's like, "I got a book, and it's been sitting in the back of my car, and someone gave it to me, and I forget how it came to him." He's like, "Someone gave it to me. And, you know, it's not really my thing, but I think it might be your thing, and I want to give you this book. Can I give you this book?" And I'm so friggin' giddy inside because I'm like, it's my birthday, you took me out to dinner, and now you're giving me a present. And I'm like, yes. And in the same way how I talked about with the Glass Bead Game, it's like meeting reality as it comes to you. Like, not necessarily defining things. Like, you know, I was in another book reading this other book, and then I learned about the Glass Bead Game. And for me, this is how I do it, is like to be flexible enough to recognize that this is coming into my world, and I need to meet that, and I need to look for the things which where it makes sense. And so I'm thinking in my mind, like, all of this makes sense, this is perfect, I'm so friggin' happy. So at the end of the meal, he goes and he gives me a book. And so guess what book it was? For those of you who guessed Manly P. Hall's Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, Rosicrucian, Symbolical Philosophy, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Well, that's what it was. This was exactly the book I was looking for. And it's a different edition with these great, you know, it's you know, this is, again, this isn't the original edition. This isn't a first edition, but this was another edition. And I've been asking, you know, myself, the Rosicrucians, whatever you want to call them. I'm like, I'd like to see another version of the book. And sure enough, on my birthday, it came. God, I'm 28 minutes into this. All right. And that was just like this. We're just in the introduction. We're just in the introduction of this video. All right. But, so as you can see, like, books are one of the touch points for me. And maybe they're not for you, but I guarantee there are things in your life that are your touch points. And you know they're the touch points because it's what are naturally of interest to you, that you don't have to necessarily force it. You know, anything you collect, you know, those are your touch points. And to begin to look at things, you know, this is just, at least I'm sharing the way I like to play the game. This makes it much deeper, and you begin to have this relationship with reality on a deeper level. So okay, so we're going to return to the Glass Bead Game, and we're going to get into the weirdness of the Glass Bead Game. So the Glass Bead Game begins with a general introduction. It begins with an introduction. The introduction is about 30 pages, and it is dense reading. Like, I'm used to reading all these books, which are easy to read, and like, this is like, sentences are 30 words, where most sentences in books, which are meant to be consumed by the modern mind, sentences are, 8 to 10 words. It's designed for a 7th grade reading level. And, you get accustomed to it. So when you're not used to reading, like I am, you're not used to reading like really dense literature. It's hard. And so like, Jenny and I are reading this, and like, you read a sentence and then you got to stop. And you're like, what did I just read? And because there are like 3 different ideas which are being conveyed, and one of them is being conveyed in the negative. So you got to reverse that. And, it's really dense, and you need to put time into it. And we were excited for the introduction to be over, because we knew once the introduction was going to be over, we're going to get into the story, and the story is going to read easier. But we wanted to read the introduction. We didn't want to skip the introduction, because we knew that it's going to be important. So 2 nights ago, we finally finished the introduction, and there's a bit of celebration. And again, this is right before we're going to bed. Right before we're going to go to bed. And sorry, something just popped up. We're like, okay, well, let's read a couple pages. We finished the introduction. Let's read a couple pages of the actual story. And we read like maybe 2 pages, just like a sneak peek of what's going to be. We read that, and then we went to bed. And so what's also going on in this world, if you remember, we talked a lot about the Sator Square, and, I'm making the Sator Square. So this is it so far. I'm still working on it. It's coming along real nice. What I've been doing is I've been putting it under the bed, sleeping, on top of it, whatever that would be, I don't touch any of that, like, that Enochian magic. There's something inside me which is not interested in that. It's based upon dominance and control, but this Sator Square seems to be a little bit different. So I'm kind of playing with it, just in a fun sort of way. There was a comment in the last video where someone's like, oh, I wouldn't play with that if I were you. And, there's... I respect that, and that gave me pause. But nonetheless, I'm still playing with this, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, so I put it under the bed, go to bed, and that night I wake up. I wake up 3:37. That, I think a lot of us we seem to find ourselves waking up at the same time at night, whether it's you just remember that time, or whether there's something more to that, that's up for you to decide. But nonetheless, 3:37 seems to be a time which I seem to recognize. So I kind of wake up, and I become aware that I am awake, and then I open my eyes, and my bedside light is on. My bedside light is on. And immediately I sit right up, and I'm like, that ain't right. That is not right. And so I woke up Jenny. I'm like, and she's like, why is the light on? I'm like, I don't know. Why is the light on? Turned the light off, and we went back to bed, but my head was kind of spinning. And the next morning we discussed it. We're like, okay, let's walk through all of the different possibilities of what would cause this to happen. What would cause this to happen? Because, there's a part of me which wants to jump right away to like the weird stuff. But, you can't, you need to go through, you need to go through the most logical and the most possible explanations of what it would be. And, the first was going to be, was there something electrical? Like, no, the light was on the on position. There was like a switch, and it was on the on position. Was there someone else who could have done it? Like, a child? And like, no, they were not able to. And so probably what is going to be the most logical explanation is that one of us was sleepwalking. Neither one of us has any history of sleepwalking, and neither one of us like felt or heard the other one get up and move around. So there's a first for everything, but that's kind of where we left things, and we're like, we're definitely open. we're open to like, maybe there's something else going on, whatever that something else may be. But we wanted to go and stay a little bit on the more mundane explanation, because you don't want to go into the deep end too fast. You never want to go in the deep end too fast, or at least I don't. You can do whatever the hell you want, I suppose. But anyway, so I go back to the Glass Bead Game, and I went and I looked at for whatever reason, I was motivated to go back to the beginning of the introduction. Let's see if you could see this. I can't. And the top part of the introduction is a paragraph in Latin, and then beneath it is that paragraph translated. So I want to read to you that translated paragraph. And it is, here it is. For although in a certain sense and for light-minded persons, non-existent things can be more easily and irresponsibly represented in words than existing things. For the serious and conscientious historian, it is just the reverse. Nothing is harder, yet nothing is more necessary than to speak of certain things whose existence is neither demonstrable nor probable. The very fact that serious and conscientious men treat them as existing things brings them a step closer to existence and to the possibility of being born. That's exactly what just happened. It's talking about these non-existent things and existent things. Like what he's talking about is the non-existence, like, fallacies, fantasies, and to the serious minded person, the serious historian, they don't look at them as being serious, but they need to, because it's only from that serious contemplation that what seems to be non-existent, the mystical, the magical, that which you cannot put your hands on, then it has the possibility of being born. If that is not a description of not only of what we experienced, but what we described when we were trying to work through it and to talk about it in a very serious and conscientious way, like what did we experience? So that's the beginning of our glass bead mystery. I want to say one more thing. Before I move on to the Invisible College. And I did... some of you may have seen, and I'd recommend it. I was interviewed on the Higher Side Chats. And I want to say it was probably like in November of 2020. And I talked a lot about like William Stevenson, and I talked about like the British Security Coordination and all these sort of different things. And then I talk about how that research then jumped over into Doctor Who. And I then moved that into the London Olympics and all of this different stuff. But if you recall, the reason why I did that was because I had a dream one night. And this was back in probably in November, in early November. And I meant to bring my dream journal up here so I could show you my dream journal, but I forgot before I sat down to record this. And in that dream, I had a very, very unusual dream. And what the circumstances of the dream was that I was in John Dee's castle, and it was a circular room, and it was a hidden room in his castle, and it was stone walls. And I walked in, and I found a scroll, and I opened it up, and I said the word rose. And then as soon as I said the word rose, all of the lights went off. All of the white lights went off. And as soon as that happened in the dream, I kind of like freaked out, I suppose, and I woke up. And when I woke up, there was this period of like, I don't know, it was probably like 30 seconds, but it felt like a really long time, where I was so disoriented that I did not know where I was. I knew who I was. I knew I was Mike, but I'm like, where am I? Where am I? And it took me a moment to bring into context of like, okay, I'm lying in a bed, and this is my house, and blah, 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 blah. But that is unusual for me. That's unusual for me. I actually really like it. I like that feeling of being like, whoa, where am I? And that's why I know it's unusual, because I pay special attention to when that happens. And to me, this felt very similar, primarily with like a light going on and a light going off, and like Rosicrucianism and all of these things. So put context into that. I don't know. I want to share that story. And the story, I'm going to continue to share with it as this unfolds. In the reading of this book, and we'll see where this takes me. So, all right. So let's switch gears here, and we're going to go on to the Invisible College. So, where to go with this? So I got this email the other day. I got this email January 11th, 2021, 1/11/21, 1110. I don't know if the dude meant to send it that way. I doubt he did, but there's a whole bunch of ones. Take that as whatever you want. The beginning. You want to take this as the beginning? That would make logical sense. It says, it's titled Invisible College, Susquehanna Alchemy, Washington College, Chesterfield, Maryland, established 1782. It says I'm pretty certain that we had not had a previous email exchange about this, so I don't know if he added in the but I read it. So basically what he says is, as someone living in Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland area, I couldn't help but adding Washington College, established in 1782 in Chesterfield, into your Invisible College cross. This would extend the college cross down, and maybe more like a traditional Rosicrucian cross a bit. And then he sent me this picture, and this is what he's talking about. So we got right here, this white line right here. This is the Susquehanna River. It's also the divider between these different counties: Lancaster County, York County. This is the Mason-Dixon line. This is Pennsylvania. This is Maryland. This right here is the Chesapeake Bay. If you're familiar with this, if you've seen some of my other work, this is what he's making reference to, and that circle is found right here. This is Franklin and Marshall College is located right here. This is York College. This is Elizabethtown College. It's all centered right here on something called Highpoint, Scenic, Vista, and he says, like, hey, look, Washington College is right down here, and it's on the same line. Like, hey, this is something. So, Colin is spot on. So let's go into this. I'm going to refresh everyone's memory. Highly recommend watching The Secret on the Susquehanna, Part 1 and 2, which begins right here with the John Smith map of Virginia. This is the John Smith map. And I go into this having a secret code. This within the secret The Secret on the Susquehanna, it goes into all of the Francis Bacon stuff, all of the Rosicrucian stuff, demonstrates this is a Rosicrucian document, and it has a secret, it probably has a lot of secret codes in it, but one of them is a certain location, which is the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel. You see this reversed 40 right here. This refers to the 40th parallel. You know, these are the parallels up here. Here's the 39th, the 40th, 41st. And the 40th is mirrored reverse. Like, you know, that's part of the analysis. But, you know, if you don't know this information, you know, go and watch that video. This is Chesapeake Bay. It's a little confusing here because north is over here. We're used to seeing maps like this where we have north on the top, but you can see this is the Chesapeake Bay. You can see here, this is the Susquehanna River. This is the Susquehanna River here. This person here is a Susquehannock. You know, it's really good stuff. I've talked about this a lot. But this is where it begins, and where it ultimately led me to is to go look at that exact location, the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel, and we find this. We find this park, Highpoint, Scenic, Vista. It's at exactly 40 degrees, 0 minutes, 6 seconds, and it's got this Rosicrucian symbol of a crescent moon and a sun. And this park opens up on exactly the 400th anniversary of Jamestown, which is what this map is linked to, and like it all lines up like so perfectly. And as I said before, this map was the rabbit hole, the trailhead which brought me into the Susquehanna mystery, the Susquehanna ARG, lowercase a, lowercase r, lowercase g. And we go a little bit deeper than just Highpoint, and we came to this map. And in this map, what we see, this is the Susquehanna River, and this here is the Highpoint, Scenic Vista. Let's go and zoom this in, make this a little bit closer. You could see right here, right at the center, this white line is where the 40th parallel is, and you can see written right there is Highpoint, Scenic Vista on the map. See this 23.5 degrees. This is between east-west and what this line of colleges is, and this just so happens to be the axial tilt, or the angle in which the ecliptic is off of the horizon. Right here is Franklin and Marshall College. Right here we can see is York College. Right here we can see is Elizabethtown College, slightly off the circle, ever so slightly off the circle, but it's close enough. And so that this became what I called within Rosicrucian lore, there is something which is known as the Invisible College. They talked about it. You know, hundreds of years ago. Francis Bacon wrote about it. There are all these different organizations that are part of it. And we could see each of these colleges, York College, Franklin and Marshall College, and even Elizabethtown College, like they all have multiple connections to and synchromystic connections to Rosicrucianism and or Francis Bacon or you know, these different sort of Masonic organizations like that kept on coming up. And so it was very easy to say, for whatever it means, like, you know, this is the Invisible College, which was pointed to in this map. This map came out in 1612, and then this was 1787. This is 1787. This came out in 1899. And this was the Invisible College. But now with the information, and we're going to go and verify it. We're going to go and verify it, which Colin has pointed out. Like went from the circle. So this is what everyone who always saw this, they were like, well, what the hell is in this? What is right here? What is implied to be right there? And I've driven there. You know, I live right around here. This is Marietta. This is where I lived when it began. You know, this was part of the ARG for me. I'm doing all this research. I'm like, oh, the 40th. I'm doing all this research on this map, and I'm like, oh, it's pointing to the 40th parallel at the Susquehanna River, Susquehannock right there. And then I go and I see, holy shit, I'm living exactly right there. I had no idea where the 40th parallel was before doing this work. But anyway, so this moves to from the Invisible College, and this point was always like, what is this? What is implied to be here? I drove my car here. I looked at it. This is a bunch of cornfields in southern York County. I've got a good friend, Brandon, who lives right here, and he's kind of playing a pun, like living in this area. But I was just like, it's the Invisible College. And there's Rosicrucian symbolism written all over the place, as I showed you before. And even more so, York College is in York City, and Franklin and Marshall College is in Lancaster City. And Lancaster City is known as the Red Rose City, and York City is known as the White Rose City. They're taking those nicknames because it's a play upon the cities in Great Britain, which they are named after, which were the original White Rose and Red Rose, home of the War of the Roses. So this is quite literally, Rosicrucian, no matter how you want to look at it. I go into Rosicrucianism very deeply in Lancaster, within the mystic Lancaster cities. But now we have moved from just like this invisible college, and this is turned into an actual cross, an actual rose cross. There are all these different versions of what and who the Rose Cross is. Before we jump the gun as to what we think the Rose Cross is, I'm still in a point of uncertainty. There are different versions of the Rose Cross. The Kabbalistic order of the Rose Cross, the Rosicrucian Fellowship. This is the Golden Dawns version. This is the same one they use at Amorc. This is the one which Aleister Crowley used. There's all of these different versions of the Rose Cross. Who and what it is, maybe that's up to, maybe not so much debate as much as like what version you're going to go and subscribe to. But what is not up to debate is the fact that the Rose Cross as a symbol is very, very significant within the esoteric collective consciousness. Here we see right here, York, Pennsylvania, the White Rose City. Here we have Lancaster, Pennsylvania, nicknames the Red Rose City. This guy, James Hamilton, laid out the city. This is where Hamilton Watch comes from. Remember, I keep talking about Hamilton Watch. This guy was a Rosicrucian. How do we know that? Go and see, if you're curious as to the details, go and watch The Secret on the Susquehanna. I go into the significance of the American Philosophical Society. And why that is a symbol of the Invisible College and Rosicrucianism. But nonetheless, that and Benjamin Franklin are the key players. So then we see here Washington College, founded in 1782, 5 years before the founding of these two schools. And, it's the 10th oldest college in the United States. It went from being called the Kent County Free School to being called Washington College when George Washington gave money to them. And we see that the first president was this guy by the name of William Smith. The reason why he became the president, he was living in Aberdeen, Scotland. Aberdeen, Maryland is important too. We're going to touch that in a moment. But he received he wrote a book, and then Ben Franklin read it. Ben Franklin is the key to all this, and he sends him letters like, hey, why don't you come on over, hang on out, and you can work at our college. And so that eventually brought this guy Smith to become the president of Washington College. It's a small school, not a particularly well-known school, but we can see here that, did I include it here? But somewhere where I read that Washington College has housed, let's see right here. Washington College has hosted 5 U.S. presidents. Symbolically, that's very, very significant. Not many small schools, particularly small schools, can say that same luxury. So nonetheless, Washington College is significant. We can go look here, Franklin and Marshall College. We can see that it was named for Franklin Marshall, who funded its institution, its establishment. York College began as York County Academy, 1787, the same year as the establishment of Franklin College, which became Franklin and Marshall. It received its charter from the General Assembly of Pennsylvania, and it was led by this guy, John Andrews. And who was John Andrews? John Andrews, we see right here, he was the founder of the Academy of York College, and Andrews received his doctorate at Washington College in Chestertown, Maryland. Like, all of these guys are connected. They all go through the University of Pennsylvania. They're all connected to the American Philosophical Society. All of those things, the American Philosophical Society, University of Pennsylvania, they all got their origin from an organization which was known as the Leather Apron Club, very Masonic, not exactly hidden in its name, which then became the Junto, which then became the American Philosophical Society and became University of Pennsylvania. And all of this came from Ben Franklin. If you're familiar with the story of the Lancaster Treaty of 1744 and about the Iroquois Nation, I've talked about that before. It's all through Ben Franklin where the lessons of Conestotago was shared. It's the same people, same time period, the same places. They keep pointing to the Rose Cross, this area, and the Rose Cross and the Susquehanna River. And so we're going to kind of stop it at that for right now. There's undoubtedly, we're going to be like, well, what is it? What does all this mean? What is the significance? And so this is the Susquehanna mystery. This is the Susquehanna mystery. This is the ARG. This is the entryway into it. And if you're familiar with any of the other work where I go into it, we talk about how the Susquehanna mystery begins with the establishment of the first computer, the beginning of globalism, and the first power plant, Edison's power plant of three-wire distribution of electricity. All of these happen on the Susquehanna River. I call it a 400-year magical ritual which happened on the oldest river on the planet. All of these pieces of information are meant to inspire deeper sort of connection. And then what that connection, what this meaning is, that's for each person to decide. Undoubtedly, if you are touched by globalism, computers, and electricity, and if you're watching this, the answer is yes, 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 and yes, you are connected to this mystery, most likely on an unconscious level. As you become more conscious with it, you become more aware of what the Susquehanna River is. It is my understanding, it is my take that all flowing water, all rivers, all streams are technologies which we're always part of, but we're separated from them in our current state. And yes, each one is unique and is significant, but the ones that are going to be most significant to you are the ones which are closest to you. So it's not a competition, but there is a recognition in understanding hierarchy. So, all right. So that being said, we're going to go and we're going to look a little bit closer. I'm going to give you a little tour of this area. And we're going to verify that Washington College is actually part of this invisible college. So let's hold on for a second. I'm going to change my screens a bit. All right, so here we go. This is Susquehanna River. This right here, this little green triangle right here, this is where Highpoint is. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can see it's Highpoint, Scenic, Vista. And remember, we've got Elizabethtown, the three markers on the circle that goes around Highpoint, Scenic Vista is right here. This is where we're going to find York College. Right here is where we find Franklin Marshall College, and up here in Elizabethtown. And the line from Elizabethtown should go all the way from Elizabethtown College down to Washington College, and it should go through Highpoint. So let's go and verify it. So first thing we want to do is let's type up Washington College, and we're going to go right here, and we're going to go, and we got that little red dot, and we can see right here, this is the Chesapeake Bay. Here's Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, Wilmington. This is the part of the world, New York, that we're at. And let's zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so let's go add this guy right here and this. I'm going to put this right here. Let's make certain that we're on it. And we're going to get this right there. I don't like how that did that, so I like it to be exact. So we're going to do this. Measure distance. That's right there. And now we're going to go and stretch this out. Now we're going to bring this up to Elizabethtown. And then we're going to go there's Elizabethtown. We're going to put it right here. And now let's go take a look. Now if you look, the distance between the two is 69.96. It's perfectly 70 miles. And let's go right here's our high point, and let's see where this line goes. And we have a direct hit. Our friend Colin is spot on, and we've got ourselves our Rose Cross. So since we're here, we're going to give you a little bit of a tour. I talk about this a lot. This is the Rites of the 40th Parallel. This is a guidebook to some really, really important spots, including Highpoint Scenic Vista. Let's see where it is. Here's Highpoint Scenic Vista of this area. And you could look at it, you can look at this any way you like, but I like the analogy of an ARG, that this is the guidebook. This is the guidebook which is going to connect you in a deeper level to this area. And if you are fortunate enough to live within the mid-Atlantic region, fortunate enough to be close to this. That's what I mean, not fortunate enough to live in the mid-Atlantic. You can go here and get this book, and you can go and see these and experience these sites in person. But most of the people don't live in this area, so you still get to connect. This goes and explains. It's not the history; it's the energy of these certain areas. And I've got maps, really fun maps of them. They're designed to they play upon like a Disney World, like another ARG, like the maps they have, so that you can begin to connect with your active imagination. But let's go back, and we're going to take a little bit of a tour of these areas. So let's, I first want to show you this. We're going to go to Elizabethtown because this is kind of fun. Where's Elizabethtown? Where's Elizabethtown? Because it's not just the college, which is at Elizabethtown. We've got Elizabethtown College right there. And then you got this area right here. What's this area right here? It is the Grand Lodge Hall Masonic Village. So this is the retirement village associated with the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. And you can see Freemason Drive, Shrine Drive, Ford Drive. I think it's very interesting that it's surrounded by Serpentine Drive. Serpentine is found in great quantities right along where that fourth spot would have been, or along the cross line of the Rose Cross, which we're talking about. But let's go take a look at this for a little bit because it's kind of fun. As you can see, we can't go and explore here. This area, they're like, nope. You ain't coming in with your Google Earth cameras, or you're not. This is all off limits. But we can still see. Let's go back to map. You can appreciate the satellite of what they've got here. I find this rather interesting. This garden which they have here. And this is open to the public. I've never been there, but I know people who go to these gardens, and they say they're beautiful. And undoubtedly, they're laid out in a certain way. You decide for yourself if you want to go. This is not part of the Rites of the 40th Parallel, but I wanted to go show this because I thought it was kind of interesting. Let's see if there's anything else here. Just by looking at the way this is set up with all of these concentric circles right there. As I said, this is it's a retirement community, which you have to be a associated with the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. Interestingly, let's see, there's a Harding Drive, there's a Garfield Drive, there's a McKinley Drive, but there's no mention of James Buchanan. James Buchanan was the president, the only president from Pennsylvania before Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the second president from Pennsylvania. James Buchanan is from Lancaster, and he is the person who is usually accredited for setting the stage for the Civil War. So, we're not going to go down that path, but you can make your own sort of conclusions. Nonetheless, where I want to go with this is, let's go back to Highpoint. We're going to zoom into Highpoint. So we see right here, this is the Susquehanna River. Just getting a little bit closer. Right here is Highpoint Scenic Vista. Let's see how far away it is from the river. We've got from here, this would be the river. This is Highpoint Scenic Vista, and it is 3,300 feet. It's less than a mile away. So let's keep on going down. And you're beginning to be able to go see. Oh, it brought us right up here. You can see, this is it. This is the high point. This is why it's called High Point. We are in Susquehanna land. We can see this is the Susquehanna River right up there. We could see the entire valley. It came into existence, this park, because they're going to continue to build. You can see all of these McMansions over here, and they were going to build them on top of High Point, but because they found human remains, eminent domain stepped in. This originally was all part of what was known as Lomont Farms. It's interesting to read the history of the man who was behind Lomont Farms, but his family had to go and parcel off and sell parts of the land. This called Knight's View Road. Knight spelled Knight. I find that rather interesting. But let's go here. I think we can go there. We can see with greater detail. We can see the crescent moon and sun, and how it's set up is you park here, you walk this phi spiral up to the top. I try to come here, I don't know, like 5 or 6 times a year. It's really a really special place to go. It is so friggin' special. And if I'm lucky enough, I could go up there and like maybe tell someone a little bit about the significance of the land which they're standing, and that's fun for me. And one time I came there and I was in the parking lot and I start talking to someone, and the guy says to me, and he points to me, he's like, you're the one who's always talking about this place. And he was there with his parents, and it was really kind of friggin' cool. Like, I've never had an experience like that, but nonetheless it was kind of fun. But let's go and let's look at this. We can go and look at some of these spots. This is what it looks like up here. Look at these views. You've got these 360-degree vistas. You can see this is looking upstream. Right here, this is Chiques Rock. This is the first right. And what's so cool about the rights, if you can do them in actual go to the spots, from each right you can see 3 of them. There's the 4th one you can't see, but they are all visible. You can stand right here on High Point. You look right here, and you can identify Chiques Rock. And then right down here, at this point right here, the river makes an S-turn. It looks like it ends right here. Look right here, we've got another split. Remember we talked about in that video of like the splits in reality and Google Earth? We got a split right here. That's probably just the way the fabric of making Google Earth comes together, but nonetheless, it's fun to point out. Right here is where the 3rd spot is. This is what it looks like up here. There is a compass rose. And it's all jacked up right here. I have no idea what this is. Let's back up a little bit. It's got this really, let's see if you could see this. This is really interesting. This this passage right here, and I think it was written by, I can't remember the guy who wrote it. The guy who wrote Treasure Island, there, from one of his works, he talks about Susquehanna, and there's a quote about the word Susquehanna, and this is it. And what's so interesting about this is you can only read this during the setting sun. When the sun is directly overhead, you can't see any of these letters. You can only see it when there's a shadow cast upon them. And so it's got this kind of like Indiana Jones feel to it. But here we go. You're up here, you're up high. They've got these granite benches, and you can see all around. And this is Highpoint Scenic Vista, which you know I talk about a lot. Let's go and see any of these other areas. Let's see what this shows us. You know, you can go and get another view. You could see the rivers and how it moves its way up to this high point. From right here, I wonder if we could get an appreciation of how high this point is. So this is the road which you drive up, and this road you're driving up this road. There's a valley down here. This is Highpoint on this side, and you can see you're looking up to it. And again, it's rising up, and when you get up here, when you reach the crest, then you get to see like the vista of the river. But let's move on to another spot. I want to go to right here. Let's drop on this spot right here. Didn't want to bring me there, did it? That's Route 30 Bridge. For those people who are aware of it, Route 30 Bridge is this is also known as the main line. I've talked about the main line before. This comes out of Philadelphia that goes right through Lancaster. This is where it crosses over the Susquehanna River. This ledge right here, that's Chiques Rock. This bridge right here, which is a beautiful bridge to cross. This has a key Civil War history to it. We can look downstream. These are all the islands. This is one of the key spots where birds, when they migrate south of the river, that they south for the winter. This is bird watchers from all over come and watch here because this is a key stopover point, and it's beautiful to see. This right here is Turkey Point, home of Turkey Hill ice cream, and is also one of the spots of the rights of the 40th parallel. And let's see if we can tell. Right here is where Highpoint is, but I wanted to take us to Chiques Rock. Where do we find Chiques? Chiques Rock is located right here at this S-turn. Let's see what we can have here. See what it brings me to. All right, this is a nice little path down here, this road, and this brings you down. But you could go here. This is where you access the river. This is where that S-turn is. Right here is where Highpoint. If we could go as far right here, we could see the other third point, but we can see all of this stuff, but that's not exactly what I was looking at. We were just standing right here where the S-turn is, looking downstream. I want to go and see if it'll take us on top of this cliff. I think it will. Where is Chiques? Will it bring it to me right here? I thought it did. Either way, so that's a little tour for you, my friends. That is the heart of the Invisible College. If you're interested, pick up a copy of this. I only got a couple hundred left. I made 1,000 copies when I had it printed, and so I think I got like 300 left. I think it's important because we're all connected, and if you've been watching this, you're in the ARG of the Susquehanna Mystery, so this is another way to bring it deeper. Nonetheless, this was a lot of fun. And thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I love it when you comments and any of the information which you share. I read it all. I don't ever comment on YouTube, but I usually do respond to any email which is sent to me. And again, if you're interested in something which is more personal, go ahead and order a biomancy session. And I apply this type of analysis into really getting into your own unique story. So that being said, this is Mike. Enjoy your day. I'll talk to you real soon. Take good care.